In the vast expanse of the Andromeda-adjacent spiral arm, where stars burned cold and civilizations measured their existence in geological epochs, the Zephakari Dominion had perfected the art of conquest through patience. For 17,000 years they had observed, catalogued, and ultimately consumed 47 worlds, each one a carefully orchestrated symphony of subjugation that began not with plasma cannons or invasion fleets, but with the quiet whisper of infiltration. The species that comprised the Dominion had learned long ago that brute force was inefficient, costly, far better to study a world from the shadows, understand its weaknesses, and then, when the moment was perfectly calibrated, strike with surgical precision at the exact pressure points that would cause an entire civilization to collapse inward upon itself. But Earth was different. High Commander Veltharion stood before the massive holographic display aboard the flagship Endless Patience, his 4 eyes tracking the slow rotation of the blue-green world that had captivated and frustrated his analysts for the better part of 3 decades. Unlike his predecessors who favored the ornate ceremonial armor of their rank, Veltharion preferred the simple, functional black carapace that marked him as a soldier first, politician second. His reputation had been built on efficiency, not pageantry. "Show me the geological surveys again," he commanded, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked him as descended from the ancient singer caste of Zephkar Prime. The hologram shifted, revealing cross-sections of Earth's crust, mantle, and core. To any other species it would have appeared as nothing more than a standard rocky planet, albeit one with unusually high levels of tectonic activity and an abundance of liquid water. But the Zephkari had perfected the art of reading worlds like ancient texts, interpreting the subtle signs that revealed a planet's true nature. "The mineral composition is curious," offered Navigation Prime Kekson, her 6-fingered hands dancing across the control interface. Unlike the High Commander, she bore the intricate geometric scarification that marked her as one of the Seeker caste, the explorers and knowledge-gatherers whose neural patterns had been selectively enhanced over millennia. Unusually dense core, magnetic field strength approximately 40% above galactic standard, and these formations. The display zoomed in on specific geological features, massive mountain ranges that seemed to follow no natural pattern, their positioning too deliberate, too symmetrical to be purely the result of continental drift and volcanic activity. Veltharion's mandibles clicked together in the gesture, the species used to express deep thought. "How long since we lost contact with the advanced scouting party?" 47 rotations. "High Commander." They transmitted the initial surface analysis, confirmed the presence of the indigenous sapient species, and then, clicks, Jan's secondary arms gestured in the motion that indicated incomplete data. Silence. Environmental hazard? Unlikely. The atmospheric composition is well within tolerance ranges for our biosuits. No evidence of hostile microorganisms or toxic compounds. Indigenous resistance? Even more unlikely. The Navigation Prime's tone carried the subtle harmonics of certainty. "Our preliminary observations indicate a species barely past their nuclear phase, with no evidence of faster-than-light capability or advanced energy manipulation. They're still using chemical propulsion for their most advanced space vehicles." Veltharion moved closer to the hologram, studying the rotating planet with the intensity of a predator examining its prey. Something about Earth triggered his deepest instincts, not hunger but caution. In his 17 centuries of life he had learned to trust those instincts. 15,000 kilometers below, Dr. Amanda Cross pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the research station, buried 3 miles beneath the Colorado Rockies, and felt the mountain breathe. It was a subtle sensation, so slight that most people would have dismissed it as imagination or the settling of geological structures under their own immense weight. But Amanda had spent the last 12 years of her life studying the anomalous seismic patterns that seemed to pulse through the major mountain ranges of Earth, and she knew the difference between natural geological activity and something else entirely. "Still getting the readings?" Dr. James Hawthorne's voice carried a note of weary skepticism as he looked up from his bank of monitoring equipment. At 63, he had enough experience with government black projects to maintain a healthy cynicism about anything that couldn't be explained with conventional physics. "Stronger than ever," Amanda replied, not moving her hand from the wall. "The resonance frequency is increasing. Whatever's down there, it's becoming more active. The Deep Earth Monitoring Station, officially designated as a seismic research facility studying potential earthquake prediction methods, had been Dr. Cross's home and obsession for longer than she cared to calculate. The government funding had come through channels so deeply buried in the defense budget that even she wasn't entirely certain which agency was ultimately responsible for their work. All she knew was that someone, somewhere, had decided that the anomalous readings coming from beneath Earth's major mountain ranges were worth investigating. "Amanda!" Hawthorne's voice had changed, taking on the sharp edge that meant something significant was happening. "You need to see this." She moved to his workstation, where 3 separate displays showed seismic data from monitoring stations scattered across the globe. The Himalayas, the Andes, the Rockies, the Alps, each one showed the same pattern, a slow, rhythmic pulse that seemed to be synchronizing across continents. "How long has this been building?" she asked. "Started about 6 hours ago. But look at this." Hawthorne pulled up a comparative analysis that made Amanda's breath catch in her throat. "The frequency is matching. All of them. Every major mountain range on the planet is resonating in perfect harmony." The implications hit her like a physical blow. Geological formations separated by thousands of miles don't naturally synchronize their seismic activity. The energy requirements alone would be staggering, requiring either some kind of coordinated system operating on a planetary scale, or Dr. Cross. The voice came from the station's communication system, but it wasn't Hawthorne's usual contact from the surface. This voice carried the crisp authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "This is Colonel Patricia Reyes, United States Strategic Command. I need you and Dr. Hawthorne to prepare for immediate evacuation." Amanda felt her stomach drop. Strategic Command didn't involve itself in seismic research projects. "Colonel, what's happening up there?" "We have multiple identified objects in Earth orbit. Large ones, and according to our deep space monitoring stations, they didn't arrive here through any kind of propulsion system we understand." The mountain's pulse seemed to intensify, vibrating through the soles of Amanda's feet and up into her bones. Whatever Earth was responding to, it had been waiting for this moment. Aboard the Endless Patience, Valtharian studied the latest intelligence reports with growing unease. The humans had detected their arrival. That much was expected. Any species capable of basic orbital mechanics would notice the sudden appearance of a fleet, even one operating under minimal emissions protocols. What concerned him was the speed of their response. "Hi, Commander." Communications specialist Tyrandek's voice carried the melodic tones of his caste, but underneath lay a note of confusion that was deeply troubling. "We're receiving transmission attempts from the surface. Highly focused, narrow-beam communications directed specifically at our vessels. Language analysis? Preliminary translation matrices suggest they're attempting to establish diplomatic contact. Standard first contact protocols, offering to exchange information about their species in return for peaceful coexistence." Veltharian's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation among his people. "They shouldn't have been able to detect our precise location with that level of accuracy. Our stealth fields are rated against species with technologies several centuries more advanced than theirs. Perhaps their detection methods are more sophisticated than our initial assessment suggested," offered Kexitan. "Or perhaps," Veltharian said slowly, "we're not dealing with just the indigenous species." The possibility hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The Dominion's expansion had been so successful precisely because they were careful to choose worlds that lacked powerful protectors. Establishing a foothold on a planet already claimed by a more advanced civilization was a mistake that had ended entire fleets in the past. "Initiate deep scan protocols," Veltharian commanded. "I want to know everything about this world. Every energy signature, every technological anomaly, every piece of data our sensors can extract, and get me a direct line to the advanced scouts." "Sir, we haven't been able to contact." "Then send another team. Armed reconnaissance. This time. If our people are being held somewhere, I want them found. If they're dead, I want to know what killed them." The holographic display showed Earth rotating peacefully below them, its swirling clouds and deep blue oceans creating an image of serene beauty that belied the growing tension aboard the Dominion fleet. But as Veltharian watched, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The cloud patterns were changing, not randomly as weather systems should, but with purpose. Spiraling formations that seemed to be aligning, positioning themselves above specific geographic locations. Above the mountain ranges. Navigation Prime, he said quietly. Scan those cloud formations. I want atmospheric composition, electrical activity, everything. The results appeared within moments, and Valtherian felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: genuine fear. The clouds weren't clouds at all. They were energy fields, barely visible to standard optical sensors but blazing like stars when viewed through the proper spectrum. And they were connected. Vast streams of energy flowing between continents, linking every major mountain range into a single planetary network. High Commander, Kexithun's voice was barely above a whisper. The energy output we're detecting, it's equivalent to the total power consumption of a Type 3 civilization. Valtherian stared at the display, watching patterns of energy that dwarfed anything in the Dominion's considerable arsenal. Earth wasn't just inhabited by a primitive species struggling with basic spaceflight. Earth was a fortress, and they had just announced their presence to whatever was sleeping inside it. The mountain ranges pulsed once more, their rhythm now synchronized not just across continents but across the entire planet. And for the first time in his long career of conquest, High Commander Valtherian began to wonder if his fleet had just made the last mistake it would ever make. 3 days after the arrival of the Zefkanari fleet, the world had not ended. This fact alone was causing considerable unrest among the intelligence communities of every major nation on Earth. In the Situation Room buried beneath the Pentagon, General Harrison Blake studied satellite feeds that showed the alien vessels maintaining perfect geosynchronous orbit above key population centers. No demands had been made, no attempts at communication beyond the initial unsuccessful diplomatic overtures. The ships simply waited. "It's a siege tactic," suggested Admiral Catherine Price, her fingers drumming against the polished conference table. "They're trying to wear us down psychologically before they make their move. Or they're studying us," countered Dr. Elizabeth Harper from the CIA's Science and Technology Division. "Learning our weaknesses, mapping our infrastructure, preparing for surgical strikes." General Blake nodded absently, his attention focused on a different set of data streaming across his personal display. Deep beneath the Earth, every seismic monitoring station on the planet was recording the same impossible phenomenon. The mountains were singing, not metaphorically. The harmonic resonance being detected by Dr. Cross and her team in Colorado was now being replicated by underground facilities in 12 different countries. Whatever lay beneath Earth's major mountain ranges was responding to the alien presence with increasing intensity. "General?" his aide whispered, approaching with a priority communication. "Dr. Cross is requesting immediate contact. She says it's urgent." Amanda had not slept in 72 hours. Coffee and determination were the only things keeping her conscious as she stared at data that defied every principle of geology she had spent her career studying. "The resonance is accelerating," she explained to the assembled video conference of military officials, whose faces filled her monitor. "Whatever system is buried under these mountains, it's not just responding to the alien presence, it's preparing for something." "Preparing for what?" General Blake's voice carried the weight of a man who needed answers he could act upon. "I don't know, but the energy output is increasing exponentially. At current acceleration rates, we're looking at a planetary-scale event within the next 48 hours. On her second monitor, Hawthorne was tracking seismic data from around the globe in real time. The synchronized pulses had evolved into something more complex, harmonic patterns that seemed to carry information like a planetary nervous system communicating with itself across vast distances. "Dr. Cross," Admiral Price leaned forward. "In your professional opinion, is this system natural or artificial?" Amanda took a long breath. The question she'd been avoiding for 3 days because the answer was terrifying regardless of which way it fell. The engineering required to create a network this sophisticated would be beyond our current capabilities by several centuries. But the integration with Earth's geological structures is so complete that it appears to have developed alongside the planet's formation. Which means, either someone built this system billions of years ago and perfectly integrated it with Earth's natural development, or— Amanda paused, struggling with the implications of her own words. Or Earth itself is not what we think it is. Veltharion stood in the forward observation deck of the Endless Patience, watching the planet below with the focused intensity of a hunter who had suddenly realized he might be the prey. 3 days of intensive scanning had yielded more questions than answers, and each new piece of data made the situation more ominous. "Report," he commanded as Kekstuin approached with the latest analysis. "The energy network is definitely artificial, High Commander, but the construction methods are unlike anything in our historical databases. The integration with the planet's natural systems is so complete that our techs initially believed they were observing some kind of evolved biological process. Evolved how? Unknown. But the technology demonstrates principles that our own scientists haven't even theorized. Energy manipulation on a scale that rivals stellar engineering projects but contained within a single planetary system." Veltharion's 4 eyes tracked the slow rotation of Earth, noting the way storm systems now seemed to spiral in perfect alignment with the energy flows emanating from the mountain ranges. The planet was beautiful, he had to admit, vibrant and alive in ways that most worlds weren't, but beauty could be the most dangerous trap of all. "What happened to our second reconnaissance team?" Kexithorn's hesitation was answer enough, but she provided the details anyway. "They achieved surface landing approximately 18 hours ago. Transmitted initial observations for exactly 14 minutes, then complete communications blackout. No distress signals. No evidence of hostile action. They simply stopped transmitting." "Same location as the first team? Different continent entirely. But both landing sites were within 50 kilometers of major mountain formations." Veltharion felt his mandibles click together in rapid succession, a sign of deep agitation that he normally kept under strict control. 2 teams, 2 continents. Same results. Whatever was protecting this world was either incredibly efficient or operating on a scale that made individual teams irrelevant. "High Commander," communications specialist Tyrenic's voice carried new harmonics, excitement mixed with confusion. "We're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface, but it's not coming from the indigenous species." "Explain." "The signal originates from beneath the surface, deep beneath, and it's being transmitted in our language." The observation deck fell silent except for the subtle hum of the ship's systems. Veltharion felt something cold settle in his primary stomach. "Display the message." The holographic interface materialized in the center of the deck, and text began to appear in the flowing script of High Zephakari. "Greetings, children of Zephkad Prime. Your presence has been noted and your intentions evaluated. You have 60 of your standard time units to depart this system. This is your only warning." The message hung in the air like an accusation. No member of the Dominion had ever provided Earth with translation matrices for their language. No scan of the planet had detected technology sophisticated enough for real-time linguistic analysis, and yet somehow something beneath Earth's surface was speaking to them in perfect formal High Zephakari. "Trace the source," Veltharion commanded. "Already attempted, High Commander. The signal appears to originate from multiple points simultaneously. Every major mountain range on the planet is broadcasting identical transmissions." Veltharion moved to the tactical display, studying the fleet deployment around Earth. 47 vessels, carrying enough firepower to sterilize a continent. It should have been more than sufficient for any resistance a pre-FTL species could mount. But they weren't dealing with a pre-FTL species. Were they? "Navigation Prime," he said quietly. "In your assessment, what are we facing?" Kekstuin approached the display, her 6-fingered hands tracing patterns over the holographic interface as she compiled data from multiple sources. "Based on the energy signatures we're detecting, whoever built this system possesses technology that exceeds our own by a considerable margin. The planetary defense network we're observing would be capable of significant resistance." "How significant?" "Potentially sufficient to destroy our entire fleet, High Commander." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. In 17 centuries of life through dozens of successful conquest campaigns, Veltharion had never encountered a situation where retreat was not just advisable, but necessary for survival. "Helm," he commanded, "prepare for system departure. All vessels." "Sir?" The question came from Battle Prime Nexikalan, the fleet's senior military advisor. We're withdrawing? We're reassessing, Veltharion corrected. This world is not what our initial intelligence suggested. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we commit to any action that might be irreversible. As the fleet began to reposition for departure, the planet below seemed to pulse once more, a gentle, rhythmic glow that emanated from the mountain ranges and reflected off the cloud cover, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. But Veltharion's retreat order came exactly 61 time units after the warning transmission. 1 time unit too late. Amanda felt the mountain move beneath her feet, not the settling of geological structures, but the deliberate motion of something vast awakening after eons of sleep. The seismic readings had gone beyond anything her instruments were designed to measure, and the harmonic resonance was now audible through the station's superstructure as a deep, thrumming note that seemed to vibrate in her bones. "Hawthorne," she called, but her colleague was no longer at his workstation. He stood instead at the observation window that looked out into the carved stone chamber that housed their equipment. His face pressed against the transparent aluminum as he stared at something beyond. Amanda joined him at the window and felt her breath catch. The chamber walls were glowing, not with artificial light, but with a subtle bioluminescence that revealed patterns carved into the stone, patterns that definitely weren't there when the station was constructed. Geometric designs that seemed to flow and shift like living things, connecting and branching in ways that hurt to look at directly. "How long have those been there?" she whispered. "They weren't," Hawthorne replied, his voice filled with wonder and terror in equal measure. "I've been in this chamber 1,000 times. Those patterns, they're new." The patterns pulsed once, in perfect synchronization with the planetary resonance they'd been monitoring, and Amanda realized with crystal clarity that they weren't standing in a research station built by human engineers. They were standing inside something that had been waiting for this moment since before human civilization existed. The mountain around them shuddered once more, and Amanda understood that Earth's long sleep was finally ending. Above them, in the cold vacuum of space, the Zephyr fleet began to discover what happened to species that threatened a world that had been preparing its defenses since the birth of the solar system itself. The first sign that Earth was no longer playing defense came when the Rocky Mountains rose 300 meters in 11 seconds. Aboard the Endless Patience, Veltharion watched through the forward viewport as the continent below shifted. What had appeared to be natural geological formations were revealing themselves as something fundamentally different. The mountain ranges weren't rising randomly. They were unfolding like vast mechanical structures emerging from camouflaged positions they had maintained for geological ages. "Hi, Commander." Navigation Prime Kexti Hune's voice carried harmonics he had never heard before. Pure terror. "The planetary surface is reorganizing itself." The tactical display showed energy readings that shattered the scale of their instruments. From every major mountain range on Earth, massive structures were emerging, not built upon the mountains, but revealing that the mountains themselves had been the structures all along. Vast spires of crystal and metal that stretched into the upper atmosphere, their surfaces gleaming with power flows that dwarfed the output of entire star systems. "Weapons analysis," Veltharion commanded, though part of him already knew the answer would be devastating. "Every structure is armed." "Hi, Commander." "Energy weapons with focusing arrays capable of—" Kextuan paused, running calculations that seemed to make no sense. "Sir, these installations could crack planetary crusts. They're not designed for fleet engagement. They're designed for destroying worlds." "Then why," Veltharion said slowly, "are we still alive?" The answer came not from his crew but from the communications system. The same voice that had delivered the original warning, but now carrying undertones that suggested vast intelligence and patience beyond mortal comprehension. "Because, High Commander Veltharion of the 133rd Expansion Fleet, we wish to offer you a choice." The fact that the voice knew his name, his rank, and the specific designation of his fleet sent ice through Veltharion's circulatory system.
Who are you?
"We are the architects of this world's defenses. We are what remains of those who came before, and we are the reason that Earth has never been successfully conquered, despite 47 attempts by various species over the past 68 million years. 68 million years. The number was staggering, implying a defensive system that had been operational since before most current galactic civilizations had evolved. But there was something else in that statement that made Valtharian's mandibles click with realization. 47 attempts, he repeated. The same number of worlds the Dominion has conquered. The same number of species we have had to discourage from their expansionist activities. Most chose wisdom after witnessing our capabilities. Some required more dramatic demonstrations. And the humans? The indigenous species? Are our inheritors? Our children, in all the ways that matter. This world shaped them as they grew, hardened them against threats they did not yet understand, prepared them for the role they will eventually fill as its guardians. Amanda Cross stood in the chamber 3 miles beneath the Colorado mountains, watching through the observation window as the walls around her transformed into something that belonged in no human construction project. The stone had become transparent, revealing vast spaces beyond chambers and corridors that stretched into the darkness like the interior of some impossible machine. And moving through those corridors were figures that were definitely not human. They were tall, graceful, with limbs that seemed too long and faces that were hauntingly familiar despite their alien origin. As she watched, one of them approached the observation window and looked directly at her with eyes that held the weight of geological ages. Dr. Cross. The figure's voice came not through the communication system, but directly into her mind. We apologize for the deception, but it was necessary. Your species needed to develop naturally, without the burden of knowing what you were destined to become. What are we destined to become? Amanda asked aloud, her voice barely a whisper. The guardians of this world, when we are no longer able to fulfill that role. Earth is not just your home. It is a fortress that has protected this entire region of the galaxy for longer than your species has existed. And humanity was specifically evolved to inherit that responsibility. Through the observation window, Amanda could see the chamber extending into vast spaces that seemed to encompass the entire mountain, not built into it but revealing that the mountain itself was artificial. A construct of technology so advanced that it had perfectly mimicked natural geological processes for millions of years. The seismic readings we've been tracking. The mountain networks awakening to address the current threat. Your people call this process plate tectonics, but it is actually our defensive systems maintaining the camouflage that has protected Earth for so long. Amanda felt her understanding of everything she thought she knew about her own planet crumble and rebuild itself in the span of a heartbeat. How many of you are there? Few. We are an old species, Dr. Cross. Old and tired. We have maintained our vigil for so long that most of us have chosen the long sleep, leaving only skeleton crews to monitor the systems. But you, your species burns with the fire we once carried. You have the passion, the determination, the sheer stubborn refusal to surrender that this galaxy needs. High above Earth's atmosphere, Valtharian watched his fleet's sensor arrays track dozens of weapons installations that had materialized from what had appeared to be natural terrain. Each one was focused on his vessels, with the kind of precise targeting that suggested they had been tracked since the moment they entered the system. High Commander, Battle Prime Nexcalan's voice carried the strain of a soldier confronting forces beyond his experience. Our weapons are ineffective against their shielding. Preliminary analysis suggests their defensive systems are drawing power directly from the planet's core. What about retreat? They've established an interdiction field around the entire system. FitTL is impossible until they choose to allow it. Trapped. The word sat in Valtharian's mind like a piece of shrapnel. In 17 centuries of conquest, he had never found himself in a situation where retreat was not an option. The communication system activated once more, but this time the voice carried new harmonics, not the architect's, but something younger, more vital. Human. This is Admiral Patricia Morrison, commanding the Earth Defense Network. The voice was female, carrying the crisp authority of someone accustomed to making life-and-death decisions. High Commander Valtharian, you are ordered to stand down your weapons systems and prepare to receive boarding parties. Boarding parties? Valtharian's mandibles clicked rapidly. With what vessels? The answer came not as words, but as a fundamental change in the space around his fleet. The stars seemed to bend, as massive shapes materialized between the Dominion vessels and Earth. Not ships in any conventional sense, but living mountains, kilometer-long constructs that move through space as easily as through atmosphere. Their surfaces bristling with weapons that made his fleet's armaments look like primitive tools. These are the Deep Guard, Admiral Morrison's voice continued. Earth's first line of defense for the past 12 million years. They've been sleeping in the planet's crust, but recent events have made it necessary to wake them. Veltharion stared at the creatures. For creatures they clearly were, despite their impossible size, as they took positions around his fleet. Organic ships that had somehow learned to navigate the vacuum of space. Their bioluminescent surfaces pulsing with power flows that dwarfed anything in the Dominion's technological arsenal. Your terms? He asked quietly. Simple. You have a choice, High Commander. Accept our offer of alliance, and learn to become protectors instead of conquerors. Or continue your current path, and discover why 46 other species chose wisdom when faced with the same decision. And the 47th species? Chose unwisely. Their homeworld is now a monument to the consequences of threatening a world under our protection. The communication fell silent, leaving Veltharion alone with a decision that would determine the fate of not just his fleet, but his entire species. Around him, the bridge crew waited for orders that could mean surrender or annihilation. Amanda stood in the transformed chamber, surrounded by technology that made human engineering look like stone tools, and felt something fundamental shift in her understanding of her place in the universe. The being before her, one of the architects, gestured toward a display that showed the space battle unfolding high above. Your Admiral Morrison has the situation well in hand, the architect observed. She has trained for this moment her entire life, though she did not know it. The military leaders of your species have been guided toward the capabilities they would need when this day arrived. How long have you been manipulating our development? Not manipulating, nurturing, providing subtle influences that would help your species develop the traits necessary for guardianship. Courage in the face of overwhelming odds, refusal to surrender when survival itself is at stake, the ability to see beyond immediate self-interest toward the greater good. The traits you call humanity. The traits we once possessed and lost over the eons of our guardianship. Your species burns with life in ways we had forgotten were possible. That is why Earth chose you as its inheritors. Through the transparent walls, Amanda could see vast spaces where more architects moved with purposeful grace, tending to systems that had operated automatically for geological ages. But their numbers were clearly small, perhaps a few hundred individuals maintaining defenses that protected not just Earth but the entire local stellar region. What happens now? Now, Dr. Cross, your species begins to learn its true purpose. The Zephkari fleet above will be given the same choice offered to every species that has threatened this world. Join the alliance of protectors, or face the consequences of continued aggression. Most choose wisdom, and if they don't? The architect's expression, alien as it was, carried a sadness that spoke of eons of difficult decisions. Then they will learn why this region of the galaxy has remained free of the kind of predatory expansion that characterizes so many other areas. Earth is not just a world, Dr. Cross. It is the keystone of a defensive network that spans dozens of systems, all of them protected by those who chose alliance over conquest. Aboard the Endless Patience, Veltharion studied the tactical display showing the creatures surrounding his fleet and made the decision that would define the rest of his species' existence. Open a channel to Admiral Morrison, he commanded. Channel open, High Commander. Admiral, Veltharion said, his voice carrying the formal harmonics of his people's most ancient diplomatic protocols. The Zephkari Dominion accepts your offer of alliance. We renounce our expansionist activities and request instruction in the duties of guardianship. Understood, High Commander. Prepare to receive diplomatic envoys. And Veltharion? Yes, Admiral. Welcome to the Alliance. There's a lot of galaxy out there that needs protecting, and we're going to need all the help we can get. As the communications channel closed, Veltharion felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Hope. Not the anticipation of conquest, but the possibility of purpose beyond mere expansion. Around his fleet, the deep guard began to move, not in threatening formations, but in escort patterns that would guide the Dominion vessels to orbital positions where the real work could begin. The work of learning to protect instead of consume. 3 months later, Amanda Cross stood on the observation deck of humanity's first orbital defense platform. watching as Zefkari engineers worked alongside human technicians to integrate systems that would have been impossible just a year before. The revelation of Earth's true nature had changed everything. Not just humanity's understanding of their world, but their place in a galaxy far more complex and dangerous than anyone had imagined. "Quite a view," observed Admiral Morrison, joining Amanda at the observation window. Patricia Morrison had aged visibly in the months since first contact. The weight of humanity's new responsibilities settling on her shoulders like a physical burden. "Sometimes I still can't believe it's real," Amanda admitted. "6 months ago I thought I was studying earthquake patterns. Now I'm helping design defenses for star systems I can't even pronounce." "The architects chose well when they picked Earth," Morrison said. "And they chose well when they picked humanity as their successors. We have something most species lose when they become advanced enough for interstellar travel, which is the ability to care about people we've never met, in places we've never been. That's what guardianship really means, protecting those who can't protect themselves, not because it benefits us, but because it's right." Through the observation window, Amanda could see Earth turning slowly below them, its mountain ranges no longer hidden but revealed in their true glory as the fortress they had always been. The architects still maintained the primary systems, but more and more responsibilities were being transferred to human crews as they proved themselves capable of the trust being placed in them. "Admiral," Amanda said quietly, "do you ever wonder if we're ready for this?" Morrison smiled, the first genuine smile Amanda had seen from her since the crisis began. "The Dr. Cross, 3 months ago, the Zefkari showed up expecting to conquer a defenseless world. Instead, they found themselves facing technology that could crack planets and a species too stubborn to know when they were supposed to surrender. I'd say we're as ready as anyone ever is." In the space around Earth, the combined fleets of the Alliance continued their patrols. Human vessels working alongside Zefkari ships and the ancient Deep Guard protecting a region of the galaxy that had known peace for longer than recorded history. And deep beneath the mountain ranges of Earth, the architects continued their long sleep, knowing that their greatest creation, not the defensive systems but the species they had nurtured to inherit them, would carry on the work of guardianship for generations to come. The mountains of Earth had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. High above the orbital defense platforms, in the space between Earth and its moon, something new was being born. The combined efforts of 3 species, architect, human, and Zefkari, had produced the first of what would eventually become a new class of vessel. Ships designed not for conquest or exploration, but for the specific purpose of protecting worlds that could not protect themselves. Now Dr. Amanda Cross, now bearing the title of Chief Science Advisor to the Earth Defense Network, watched the maiden flight of the Guardian's promise and felt a pride that had nothing to do with personal achievement. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars, and it was exactly what the species had always been at its best. Protectors of those who needed protection, defenders of those who could not defend themselves. The mountains had awakened, and they would never sleep again.